that there's so much better could have been done. It is such a shame that after 27 years of deliberation, of debate, of expectations, of hopes, you have an act like this. If Mr. Modi wanted, he could have done it in the first normal session in 2014. He would have got a lot of applause. He could have done it in 2019. So for 9.5 years, you do absolutely nothing. And then you say special session of parliament to be done within 2 weeks, and you do it such a rush job that you don't even read the parliamentary committee's report. The present political leadership, the all-male patriarchal leadership, is saying, okay, so we make a deal. We make a compact, we make this promise, which will be delivered by our next generation. So in a sense, I'm saying I get all the credit that I've done this for women.
What is the politics of it? Like, do you think that the BJP will be able to reap the benefits of bringing this bill? And implementation is a question that is being asked by many. But the fact that they have brought this bill, will this convert into votes? Will they, get what they are looking out for?
Point is that we must recognize that BJP is currently the only far-sighted party of this country. BJP as an organization can think of its long-term self-interest.
Hello and welcome to the News Minute. After 27 years and a long struggle, the Women Reservation Bill has been finally passed in the Lok Sabha. And the Rajya Sabha is debating the bill, and it's most likely that the bill will be passed with an overwhelming majority. But the bill has raised several questions as to when it will be implemented, when women reservation will come into force. To talk about this, I have with me the Chief of Swaraj India, Yogendra Yadav. Thank you so much for talking to us, sir. So your initial thoughts and on the Women Reservation Bill, the way it has been composed, and the questions it has raised.
My first thought was, all right, something is better than nothing. It's been going on for 27 years now. It was in 1996 that Geeta Mukherjee had raised this issue, had converted this sentiment into a concrete demand. That for the first time it was introduced in the parliament, and we thought it might happen within a year or so. But after such a long wait, it seems there had come a point then, when people like me thought it would never see the light of the day. So if it is seeing the light of the day, let us celebrate it. That's my first thought. The second thought, of course, is that there's so much better could have been done. It is such a shame that after 27 years of deliberation, of debate, of expectations, of hopes, you have an act like this. The trouble is that this act does not specify clearly what exactly has been given. It falls deficient in specifying who is to be the beneficiary. It is terrible in laying down a procedure through which it will be obtained. And finally, it is completely vague on when it would be implemented. So on all these four counts, I have reasons to be disappointed. But as I said, finally, you reconcile to it. I can specify these four things for you. In terms of what has been granted, the disappointment is that the bill does not even say something as minimal as this, that in each state, in terms of, the bill simply says 1/3 of the Lok Sabha seats will be reserved for women. Does it mean that 1/3 within each state will be reserved for women? You would assume that this is the case, but the bill nowhere mentions it. In fact, Mr. Mehtab yesterday pointed out in Lok Sabha, no one had noticed it. The 2008 version of the WRB had clearly said so. This one actually goes back and does not even say that. In terms of who is to be the beneficiary, there was a widespread expectation. There is a long debate that the that giving it to women would mean that upper caste women would have certain natural advantage. And in order to counterbalance it, should we think of a sub-quota for OBC women? While there is sub-quota for SC women, for ST women, but there is no sub-quota for OBC. So that's a disappointment. On the procedural aspect, on how, the problem is that the bill does not tell us how exactly these seats will be reserved. Who will decide it? Delimitation Commission. How exactly? We don't know. Will there be rotation? The bill says yes, there will be rotation. When would there be a rotation? At least the previous bill of 2008 said every 5 years there would be a rotation, which has a logic of its own at least. This one says that you would have rotation after every delimitation. And mind you, delimitation these days takes place only after 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And funnily, this entire reservation process is only for 15 years. So on the one hand, you say it's only for 15 years. On the other hand, you say it will be rotation only after delimitation, which practically means there will be no rotation. No one gives attention to this. And finally, it is the when question in which there is a deliberate attempt to derail and to put it off to an unspecified time.
Do you also think that the government rushed into it? They could have done a much better job of answering all these questions before tabling this bill in the special session?
It's a kind of a non-seriousness that you see in so much of what this government does. For 9.5 years, you do nothing. If Mr. Modi wanted, he could have done it in the first normal session in 2014. He would have got a lot of applause. He could have done it in 2019. So for 9.5 years, you do absolutely nothing. And then you say special session of parliament to be done within 2 weeks, and you do it such a rush job that you don't even read the parliamentary committee's report, which was done in 2007-8. A parliamentary committee has gone into every comma, full stop of a provision of this kind. You could have at least learned from them. So one or two are pure errors, like the first one that I pointed out. It's an error, it's a mistake, and it's so shocking to see that a constitutional amendment carries mistakes of this kind. But the last one is not a mistake. The point about the linking of this entire reservation to census and delimitation, and thereby delaying it to an unspecified future. I think that was deliberate. It's part of the design. In a sense, it's in business language, they call it a future deal. When you make it pact today, which would have impact 15, 20 years later. So in a sense, the deal is this. The present political leadership, the all-male patriarchal leadership is saying, okay, so we make a deal. We make a compact, we make this promise, which will be delivered by our next generation. So in a sense, I'm saying I get all the credit that I've done this for women. I'm also assured that don't worry, this is not going to influence your constituency in the foreseeable future. Any member of parliament looks at the next election and maybe the election after that. So in a sense, the political leadership is saying to them, don't worry, this won't have any effect on the next election and the election after that. Baad mein dekha jayega.
Many say that this is like a blank check, a post-dated check that has been handed over. You never know what will happen next. Also, at the same point of time, you raised this question of linking it with census. Census is important for for reservations, but as far as delimitation is concerned, linking the women reservation with the delimitation, does that serve any purpose, or like you said, it is only to drag this exercise further?
I would just remind you that the 2008 version of the bill, which was drafted, which was put to a parliamentary committee which had BJP members, which was passed in the Rajya Sabha in 2010 with full endorsement from BJP, did not mention census, did not mention delimitation. Because it is completely illogical, because there is absolutely no need, because women's reservation has nothing to do with census or delimitation. You see, census and delimitation is important and relevant for SC/ST reservation. And the reason is this, that in order to reserve a constituency for scheduled caste community, you have to determine what is the population of that community in that particular constituency. What we call delimitation, in simple terms, is fresh drawing of boundaries of all the assembly and parliamentary seats. So and this is necessary because once the population changes, then you have to, of course, do it. Earlier you had a constituency called East Delhi, which is so big now that you have to now divide it into 2.5 parliamentary constituencies. That's why you need to do delimitation. And once you do delimitation, you need to know under the fresh boundaries, what is the proportion of SC/ST community in each constituency. After which you decide, okay, so now we reserve this constituency for SC and ST. Now tell me, what does this have to do with women's reservation? Women are 49% of this country. Maybe they are 48.8, maybe they are 48.1, maybe they are 47.8. What difference does it make? And in any constituency of this country, there are constituencies where you have 55% men and 45% women. Tell me, does it make a difference? How is it relevant? Does the Act say, even the new Act, does the Act say that women's population will be taken into account while deciding which particular constituencies to reserve? No, it doesn't say so, because it would be ridiculous to say anything of that kind. Why do we need to connect it to the census? There's absolutely no answer. Why connect it to delimitation? There's absolutely no need. All that was needed, if the government was serious about implementing it, all that it needed to say was the following, which is what the previous bill had said, that look, constituencies will rotate. If constituency number 1 is constituency number 1, 4 and 7 are reserved this time, in the next election, constituency number 2, 5 and 8 will be reserved. And which one begins first? Do it by a draw of lottery. That's all you need to do. You don't need anything else for this if you are serious. Now,
but the Home Minister says that delimitation exercise is needed because it's a transparent exercise, and census is required because it's bedrock to make such decisions.
About Mr. Amit Shah's transparency, the less said the better. And when he says, I want to be transparent, a government which was not willing to reveal the agenda of the parliament session now talks about transparency. And tell me, you see, what can be more transparent? You see, all this is important in deciding SC/ST seats. Because if you have 25 seats in Rajasthan, you cannot make any seat into a scheduled tribe reserved constituency. You have to know the population. That's why it matters. That's why delimitation commission has to apply its mind. Delimitation commission has to apply a special formula for all those things. Nothing of that kind is required for women's reservation. All that you need to do, because you're reserving 1/3, all that you need to do is to say every third seat, beginning with seat number X, every third seat will be reserved. That's all you need to say, because women's population does not, you don't have to be a geographer to know that. Women, it's not that there's some constituency where you have 80% women and some constituency where you have 10% women. Women are there between 45 to 55, 52, 3% of every single constituency of this country. You don't need a census. And about transparency, it is true that the procedure should be fair. But what can be more fair than what I'm talking about? And I can bet even today that as and when the Delimitation Commission or whoever in the world decides that, they will come to what I'm proposing, because there's nothing new, novel, or particularly bright about what I'm saying. That's the only way it can happen. So that's not the case. The real thing is this, that the moment you insert these two qualifications, you managed to postpone this implementation for a very, very long time to come. The Home Minister said in Lok Sabha, we'll do it immediately after 25, don't worry.
2024 or
after
25.
24.
Yeah.
So one, he conceded that yes, under the 24 election it cannot be implemented, true. Then he says after 24 we'll do it immediately. Now let's see what does immediately mean. The earliest a census can take place would be on 28th of February 2025. Census has a specific date. It's done on that day. The last day of February of the year 2025 it will be done. But it's not the case that on 1st of March you will have the data. Mind you, remember that for purposes of delimitation, you don't just need to know India has 143 crore 79 lakh people. You need to know in which village of Rajasthan, what is the number of scheduled tribe. That comes in after a year or so. These are called provisional figures, which are then verified and checked. Then comes final population totals. It usually takes about 2 years. You have very smart computers, you are doing it on a tab. Let's say you finish it all in 1 year. So in 2026, at some point, you would manage to complete the final figures, census. Then let us say you appoint the delimitation commission. Delimitation commissions, the last delimitation commission had taken 5.5 years to complete its job. This time you are very smart, there is pressure, you do it in 3 years. Remember, delimitation commission follows the procedures of judiciary. It's like a petition in the Supreme Court. It has to go through all the steps which are prescribed in law. So it will take 2 to 3 years. After delimitation commission completes its job, because delimitation commission first of all constitutes committee, then it seeks proposals, then it publishes a draft proposal, it seeks objections, then it publishes a final version, which then is accepted by the government. And then on the basis of which the election commission has to prepare fresh electoral rolls of the country, because then you know this particular booth belongs to this constituency, but the adjacent booth belongs to the next constituency. All this is required. There's no way it can be done before 2029. But more importantly, there is another catch, which everybody is deliberately ignoring, which is that under Article 82 of the Constitution, there is a clear stipulation which says that the next delimitation can only be done on the basis of a census which is held after 2026. It's a constitutional wording. You and I can't change it. It's not a matter of convenience. What is the census after 2000, which is census which is carried out after 26? That is the wording of the Constitution, which is to say 2031. That's when the next census is due. So 2031, you hold the census. 32, you get the data. 32, delimitation commission starts functioning. You would be very, very lucky if in 2035 you have the commission's recommendations. And by the end of 2035, you have the voters list prepared. And when do you implement it? Next parliamentary election, 2039. That is the catch. That is the key. And all the news reports.
According to you, that's the idea in which the entire process has been framed. The announcement has been made now. The bill has been passed, in both houses, but the implementation will take a long time. And in between, will there be any kind of surprises? Will the government change its mind, or you never know?
It doesn't depend on the government changing its mind. Now it's been inscribed in the Constitution. It's not even a law. It will, if the government has to change one word of this. If, let us say, the government wants to say, let's not worry about the delimitation now. The government again has to go to parliament, again has to have 2/3 majority in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and a majority from half the Vidhan Sabhas of this country. This is the minimum procedure. So that's the sad part of it, that we have bound ourselves now to something which cannot be completed, to my mind, before 10 or 12 years. that unfortunately is the point. There is what can possibly be done unless the government were to do an extraordinary delimitation, where you say this delimitation commission shall do nothing. It shall not do. It shall not draw boundaries. It shall not look at SC/ST reservations. It shall only determine it shall only decide. So a new delimitation commission whose only and single job is to decide which constituencies shall be reserved for women, which the commission can do in about 1 hour. It can be done. So in 1 hour, the commission can be dissolved. So unless they want to play that kind of a joke on the constitution, otherwise there is no way.
And also talking about delimitation, there are concerns that have been raised by South Indian states. The MPs have also spoken about it. So what are your thoughts on that and how this will play out?
That's a very, very big question. And that's another reason why I've said linking with delimitation is such a bad idea, because the next delimitation is going to be a very, very contentious delimitation. And the reason is this, that our population ratios have changed. The Constitution's wording says that as and when population changes, the share within Lok Sabha of different states must also change accordingly. The Constitution originally said that. It said every 10 years, whenever population changes, change the number of seats. The trouble is, if you do so, Tamil Nadu's seats will come down from 39 to 30. UP is already 80. It will probably go on to about 100 seats or so by this logic. So what it would do is that it would, and then the pattern of population is such that all the South Indian states will be losers. South and East Indian states will be losers. The entire Hindi belt, North and West, will be gainer, because this is the area which has seen more population. Now, some people project it in terms of, this is also said in a somewhat strange language, which I don't like, that, we implemented population policy, you were laggards. Look, let's not get into all that argument. The simple fact is poor people tend to have more children. Wherever you have poverty, you would have more population in those areas. At the same time, the fact is that there is an unwritten federal balance of this country. And that balance will get imbalanced if now we distribute it on the basis of simple population. Basically, it would mean that North India, the Hindi belt, will have majority in the parliament straight away. That will disturb. Currently, they don't. That disturbance. So I have argued that yes, the Constitution said so, but now we should interpret this. So there's a tension between the democratic principle, one vote, one person principle, and the federal principle. And my argument is that in this instance, we should allow federal principle to trump. That is to say, we have an unwritten federal compact in this country, and the North-South balance will not change, no matter what happens. You have to adopt something like this. So it's like the American Senate arrangements, where if you have a small state, you have 2 seats, big states, you have 2 seats. Something of that kind has to be done. But that's a completely different question. I've written about it. And my own sense is that trying to play around with that at this stage in our country's history would be playing with fire. And that would actually harm national unity in a very serious way.
And my last question to you, sir, what is the politics of it? Like, do you think that the BJP will be able to reap the benefits of bringing this bill? And implementation is a question that is being asked by many. But the fact that they have brought this bill, will this convert into votes? Will they, get what they are looking out for?
I doubt it. I doubt it because, if it was a direct beneficiary transfer kind of a scheme, then yes, the government could hope to reap benefits. Yes, Mr. Modi will add something to his image. मुझे ईश्वर ने कहा था, ईश्वर की मेरे पे वरदान है कि मेरे हाथ से काम होगा. All this sort of stuff will go on, and the BJP will obviously tom this. But you see, Congress would go around and say, okay, so why did you not give it? Why did you not implement it this time? Why have you delayed it? Congress would try to say, we were the first one to start it. BJP would say, why did you not finish it? So I think on both sides, there is something to be said. I personally don't think this is going to be a very important issue in the country, except the usual business of a bit of image making and myth making. It's that kind of a thing. If it was given directly in 24, then it could have been something of an issue, but not in this way.
But there are also this talk about why the BJP was trying to, bring this bill in the first place. What forced the BJP to take this decision? Is this because women votes are drifting away from the BJP, or BJP is becoming fast unpopular among the women voters? Is that one of the reasons?
I don't know. I don't think so. The only point is that we must recognize that BJP is currently the only far-sighted party of this country. BJP as an organization can think of its long-term self-interest. And the fact is that over the years, BJP, women used to vote more for Congress in the past. But over the last few years, BJP has become more of a beneficiary of women voters. BJP has now begun to see its political self-interest in promoting women's cause. BJP is not a pro-women party. Its notions about women, womenhood, and women's rights are completely conservative. But it's not surprising. Many parts of the world, conservative parties do manage to get more support from women. BJP does see that. So in the long run, it is cultivating a constituency. The BJP also can see that with more women coming into the parliament, organizational strength will become more important in elections than individual personality strength, which works to BJP's advantage. So I think BJP may be looking at long-term advantage. I do not see any short-term compulsion. And I certainly don't see any reason why a special session of the parliament had to be called in the month of September, except to give Prime Minister a happy birthday gift.
All right. Thank you so much, sir, for talking to us and explaining to our viewers the various aspects of this bill and the complexities that are involved. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.